people today. They could spend half their lives over 50. That's a lot of living. So it helps to have a wise friend and fierce defender in your corner. A friend like AARP. So your health lives longer.
This is just slow-mo karate?
Just slow-mo karate.
Your money lives longer.
I just bought that.
I just sold that.
And your happiness lives longer. That's why the younger you are, the more you need AARP. Join today.
Welcome to AARP Illinois' virtual event. It's so wonderful to have you with us. AARP is on a mission to connect with individuals across various communities, especially those aged 50 and above. We're here to listen, understand, and address the unique needs of you and your community as we age. Our goal is to enrich your experience by expanding our local activities, providing opportunities for you to discover and engage with all that life has to offer right here in your own community and virtually. As we journey through today's event, we invite you to consider joining our dedicated team of AARP volunteers. It's a chance to make a meaningful impact and help us better serve those 50 plus across the nation. Connect with us and be a part of this vibrant movement toward positive change. Welcome. And let's make this event both fun and transformative.
Hey AARP, welcome back. Chef Amanda here, and today we are going to explore some French and Italian recipes. I can't think of any kind of food that makes people feel more warm and fuzzy and satisfied and fulfilled than French cuisine or Italian cuisine. And so today we're going to make two of my absolute favorites. I'm going to start off here with a stuffed chicken marsala. Now, I'm a huge fan of mushrooms. I've been eating them for many, many years. Even as a kid, I loved mushrooms. And this here just seals the deal with that nice, delicious, sweet wine. And this is another great dish that's going to be good for caretaking because it's going to freeze really, really well. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing I did was give my garlic a little bit of a smash there on the counter. That way I can get my peel off, nice and simple. And then we're going to just mince that up. And first we're going to start by making a stuffing for our chicken. And so inside is of course going to be cheese, some breadcrumbs, and if you're exercising a gluten-free diet, this is a really easy recipe to swap out the flour and swap out the breadcrumbs and make a gluten-free dish. So this one works great with that. We did it here in a class just the other night, actually. It was delicious. You can hardly taste the difference. And so here I'm just mincing my garlic. This is going to be part of that delicious stuffing that I'm putting together here. All right. That looks delicious. Scrape it up, and here we go. So first into my stuffing is going to be cheese, my personal favorite part of the middle. So I've got a mix of shredded mozzarella and shredded provolone here. If there's one you can't find, no big deal. You can sub in a Monterey Jack, or there's a really good dill Havarti that I love. That would go really nice in here too, because it's a little bit herby. But any good melty cheese is going to have a great place here. Next, my one little clove of garlic went in. My 2 tablespoons of Parmesan cheese. There that goes. And my 1/4 cup of breadcrumbs. Now you could use panko here. Today we're using an Italian seasoned breadcrumb. I'm going to give this a little initial stir here. And then we've got some red pepper flake, about 1/4 teaspoon. Perfect. And then we've got some salt and pepper. Just some kosher salt and some cracked black pepper. Then we've got some sun-dried tomatoes here. These were in oil, which means they're going to be packed full of flavor, which I love. So we just remove the oil from them. You don't need to dry them off or anything. Some of that oil will be great in that stuffing. But I do like to just chop them up. That way you can get sun-dried tomato in every bite, because I love the contrast of flavor and that just kind of tanginess that you get from that sun-dried tomato. And that's going into the filling. And then we need something that binds all this cheesy love together. So we're going to use sour cream. In that goes. And then we're just going to give this a little mix to incorporate. And that sour cream is going to help it kind of stick all together. And again, if you're on that gluten-free diet, we get it. You can just swap those breadcrumbs out for a gluten-free panko or a gluten-free Italian breadcrumb, whatever you can find, or you can even make your own by toasting off some gluten-free bread and then running it through a food processor. It's a great way to use up stale bread. All right, that looks pretty good on our filling. Okay, we'll set that aside. Next, we're going to address our chicken. So I've got 2 really nice chicken breasts here. They're a pretty good size. I'm going to go ahead and put them onto my board. And we're going to do something called butterflying that chicken. First, I like to make sure it's nice and clean of any fat and gristle or straggly pieces. So I'm just going to take out anything that doesn't look perfect to me. And these are almost an 8-ounce breast, maybe a bit more each. So this is going to be a good size serving of chicken. You could probably even get 2 servings out of each chicken breast if you had some light eaters. Next thing I'm going to do is put my hand flat on top of my chicken breast, and I'm going to put my knife kind of right in the center, and I'm just going to open this up. I'm trying to do it right at about 50% so that I'm only halfway through my chicken. Then I'm going to just open that up using the tip of my knife a bit more until I've got it pretty flat. All right, let's do that with our other one as well. So I'm going to find about the halfway point here with my knife, insert but not go all the way through, and open it up like a butterfly. There we go, pretty little butterfly. All right, next we're going to grab our meat mallet, and we're going to actually use the flat side. And I'm going to get some saran wrap over here. And we just like the saran wrap to keep the chicken from splattering all over your kitchen. It's really kind of a safety precaution. And then we're going to start from the center, and we're going to pound our way out. And so basically our end result and goal is that all of the chicken is uniformly pounded and nice and thin, so it cooks a bit faster for us as well. So I'm starting from the center, I'm pounding out, and you're going to have a lot better luck and ease with this process if you are pounding from the inside of the chicken lobe that you opened up, because it's already a little bit more tender and easy to get to. So as you can see, that makes quite a large piece of chicken. It's all right if you get a little bit of a hole in it. We'll seal that up. And then go over here to number 2. Same thing, pound from the center and out. And then anywhere that looks a little bit thicker, you can just give it another whack. All right, that looks pretty good to me. We'll get rid of our saran wrap. All right, next step is going to be to season the inside of that chicken. We're going to put a lot of awesome seasoning we already did put some seasoning into our filling that goes into the center, but I just like to make sure that there's salt and pepper on the inside of the chicken too, that way it doesn't taste bland. Okay. Then I've got some string here that we're going to use to tie our chicken up. Let's see. We're going to see if this is enough. We might need another piece. And so I've got 4 pieces here. And we'll see how that works for us. Now we're going to bring our filling together a little bit. We're going to put that right down the center of our chicken. If you wanted ham in here, you could put that in there. You could put a couple strips of asparagus in the middle of this, and that would be delicious. But I really like it with just the cheese and the breadcrumbs. All right, next thing we're gonna do is just roll that on over and seal that up as best we can. Don't worry about my little hole here because we're gonna put some twine over it and we'll just make sure we sear that piece, that side last. And we'll get our little pieces of twine, go underneath, and give it a nice tight tie to keep it together. And this is just butcher's twine. You can find it in most grocery stores. And you always want to make sure that if you can, you use the same amount of twine for each piece of chicken, because you don't want to forget how many you have. Because once the chicken is cooked, the twine is a little bit harder to recognize and see. It just kind of blends in all together. We want to make sure we're not serving up string. And there we go. Again, tuck that filling back in there if it wants to sneak out. And let's repeat. Again, we're going to roll it up nice and tight. You can also do a folding method with this. But I like the twine a little bit better than a folding method, because then you could pin that with toothpicks too if you wanted. But they can be really difficult to get out once the chicken is cooked. There we go. And one more. All right, and then any of your stuffing that fell out, no worries. We will just stuff it right back in. And if you lose a little along the way, no big deal, because there we had a lot in there. All right, so now we have our two really nice, beautiful chicken breasts. I'm going to wash my hands real quick. All right, and the next step is going to be to season these up and then to dredge them in some of our flour. So here we've got our 2 cups of flour. I've got a little bit of salt and pepper. You could put any seasoning into this mix that you wanted. And then I'm also going to add just a tiny bit to the outside of the chicken here as well. I like to season all layers of everything I do with a tiny bit of seasoning instead of over seasoning one layer. All right, and once I get these into the pan, I will season the other side. So let's go ahead and fire up our pan. We're going to add a little bit of oil to the mix. Excuse me, pepper got me. 2 tablespoons of oil into the pan. You can use olive oil, veggie oil, canola oil, peanut oil, coconut oil, whatever you are feeling like. And then I've got my flour mixed here with my salt and pepper. We're going to go ahead and roll our chicken into the flour here. I'm not going to move it around too much, not more than I have to. And then I'm just going to give it a little shake. Lost a little bit of filling there. We'll tuck it back in. I'm going to do the same thing with my other chicken here. A little bit of a shake. And we're ready to rock. We're going to get our oil nice and hot so that it starts to move like water in the pan. And one surefire way to know if your oil is ready is just to put a little bit of flour there. If it rises to the top and starts to sizzle, then you know your pan is nice and hot and ready. Why is it important to have that pan hot? Well, we want to get a really nice, good sear on our chicken breast, which is going to start immediately when we drop it in. So we want a nice hot pan, and we want to hear that nice sizzle when we put our meat into the pan. So we've got a little bit of a sizzle going. We'll go ahead and load those 2 in there. And then we're going to let those go until they have a nice dark brown exterior. And then we're going to flip it, and we're going to try and cook it on all sides to get that beautiful color on it. In the meantime, I have my oven started up at 350 degrees because really our goal here is just to get some good color on our chicken, roll it around, sear the meat off on all sides, and we'll finish it in the oven. We want to be really careful to not get our chicken too dark brown and burn the flour inside of the pan because we're actually going to build our sauce right here. So next we'll move on to our mushrooms here. I've got mushrooms, and the best way to clean them is just to get a damp paper towel, give them a little wipe to get off any residual dirt from those. And then I like to cut off just the very base of my mushroom right here. And I get rid of that. Then from there, I can go ahead and slice one piece off. And then you can turn it on your flat side to complete the task. And there we have it. Mushrooms are ready to go into the sauce. Now, a lot of people will try to mess with their chicken a little early on in the pan, and the chicken is really wanting to stick on them. And that's probably because your pan wasn't hot enough when you put it in there. So we don't want to mess with it too much. I'm just giving it a little peek to see if it's right where I want it. I'm not going to flip it until it has the color that I'm looking for on it. So we'll let it go just a little bit longer, and we'll continue to get our sauce ingredients lined up. Next, I have half of a white onion, which I have cut the top off but left the root intact. Then I'm going to give it a peel, get rid of those outer layers. Check my chicken again. There's what we're looking for, folks. We've got a really nice color going on, so we'll give this one here a flip. And if you need to add more oil to your pan, don't hesitate to do so. There we go. We'll get that going again. I will add just another ring around the rosy here. And there we go. We're going to do the other side. Then after we get that side done, we're going to try and go on each side of the chicken, if you will, to where all parts are seared and brown. Then I've got my little sheet pan ready for my pan to come right out of there and then go into the oven. I'm going to turn my heat down just a little bit. That way I don't get my brown bits in the pan too brown because I want them to be able to move on to the sauce, and that's important not to burn those brown bits. All right, back to our onion here. I'm going to go with a horizontal cut into the bottom third of the onion there. And I'm going to repeat the process 2 more times, all the way back to the root without going through until I have 3 horizontal cuts. Next, I'm going to do a vertical cut just using the tip of my knife. Back to the root, but again, without going through it. And I'm going to make several of these vertical cuts. Pause. I just gave my chicken another turn, trying to achieve that brown color all the way around the chicken breast here. And then back to my onion. When I make this final vertical cut here, we're going to have a beautifully diced onion. Pardon my sniffles, that pepper really got me good. Alright, and then I'm just going to work my way around the root with my small knife. There we have it. Last flip on my chicken here. I've got really nice color going on every side. So I'm going to finish up my last side here. Maybe Aiden can get in there a little bit. It's okay if a tiny bit of stuffing is falling out. But this is what we're trying to achieve on all sides there. With that good color, which equals that good flavor. Tiny bit more oil there. I've probably got about 2 to 3 tablespoons altogether in there. I'm going to bring over my sauce ingredients and also my sheet pan ready for my chicken to go into the oven. We're going to let it just sear a little bit more, get rid of some of that oil for us. That looks perfect. All right, and so walking through our sauce here, we're going to need a little bit of butter, which I have, a tablespoon of butter, and then a little bit more oil, and then we're going to need a little bit of flour, just 2 tablespoons of flour, and then half of a small onion chopped up, which we've got, our 8 ounces of button or cremini mushrooms, which are just mini portobellos. You're welcome to use those too. Our 8 ounces of Marsala wine, and again, that's that sweet, delicious wine I was talking about. That's one of my favorites. And then, of course, a little bit of heavy cream to balance everything out, just 4 ounces of that. Give our chicken a check here. That looks pretty dynamite to me. It's exactly what we're going for here. So we're going to go ahead and pass that off to Hannah. And can you put those into the oven for us, please? And thank you. And so she goes at 350 until it comes up to be 165 degrees, which is our safe eating temperature for chicken. Any of my cheese that kind of got stuck onto the bottom of the pan, I've just removed. That way it doesn't move on to my sauce. And the next thing I'm going to do is add in that tablespoon of butter that we were talking about earlier. My last tablespoon of oil. We're going to get that going. And I'm on about a low to medium heat right now at this point. Then I've got my flour ready. If you have any dredging flour that you didn't use up, which you probably will, you can use that because we're actually going to cook it in the pan, which means it doesn't matter that it cooked or that it touched the raw chicken. All right, next into the pan goes my onions. We're going to give those a bit of a saute. We want to hear that nice sizzle when we added it into the pan. And we'll give that a stir. That's already eaten up all those brown bits on the bottom of the pan, which is going to make a terrific pan sauce here. So this technique is called sweating the onions. So we're just sweating them out into a little bit of fat to release the onion aromatics into our oil. And I can see that we've already pretty much accomplished that. So next into the pan is going to go our mushrooms. And we're going to just cook these down. The mushrooms are going to take a little bit longer than those onions did, so we'll get them nice and coated in the fat. Get all of that working. My rubber spatula was able to get most of the brown bits off the bottom of my pan here, but anything my spatula doesn't get, my Marsala wine will certainly do for me here after we get these mushrooms cooked down a bit. And I'm a big fan of just building my roux right in the pan with my vegetables. That way you don't have to take anything out, and it's able to get it all thickened right here in one pan. Got those onions moving pretty good here. I want them to be just a little bit more soft and caramelized before I go adding in my wine. And my wine today is an actual wine, though it's a cooking wine and not necessarily a drinking wine. We're going to refer to it today as our deglazing liquor, which means we're going to deglaze our pan. We're going to pick up all that brown bits from the bottom that we have been building in here the whole time. And we're going to deglaze it with our deglazing liquor. Remove the fond from the bottom of the pan, and then all of that great flavor ends up in our sauce, which is so important. Marsala is a sweet wine, and it just has a very unique flavor that I find you can't get with anything else. It's pretty close to a sherry vinegar wine or a sherry wine. There we go. We're moving pretty good here now with our mushrooms. I do like them to have a little bit of texture in my sauce, so I don't cook them to death here in this process. But you can see them softening and picking up flavor here and cooking down, which is good. Got just a few bits stuck to the bottom, but again, what my rubber spatula doesn't get, my Marsala wine will definitely soon get. And then on deck, I've got my 2 tablespoons of flour. And again, I just stole this from my dredging bowl earlier because we didn't use all of that. It's nice to have some to be able to move it around on the chicken, but you're not always going to use it all. All right. So now we're going to add our flour here. We're going to build the roux right in the pan, right on top of our veggies. And I always like to cook my flour for about 2 minutes to make sure I get all that grit and flour out of it. And then something else very special is happening here in the process. We're getting even more brown bits cooked onto the bottom of our pan. Flavor, flavor, flavor. And even though this is technically an Italian dish from our French and Italian class, it uses a lot of French techniques to get it from A to B and build this delicious sauce right in the pan. All right, that looks pretty good. So now we've got all these bits back on the bottom of the pan. Perfect opportunity for our cold wine to save the day. In another video, I told you I really like my deglazing liquor to be cold. That way when it hits the hot pan, you get that sizzle, and it's going to pick up all those bits for me. It's also going to immediately start to thicken because we've got that flour in there. It's coated all over our mushrooms and onions here. Oh, and it just smells wonderful. I've seen a lot of Marsala sauces not even have the heavy cream in it, so if dairy or an aversion to dairy is a bit of an issue for you, you could simply swap out your cheeses and your butter. Leave your heavy cream out of this dish because it's already thickening so beautifully. And again, I've got my rubber spatula to pick up all those brown bits from the bottom here. Got my heat on low now, just getting it to kind of come up to a bubble. Just going to let that cook down just a little bit, but I do like to taste it at this point and see if there's salt or pepper, something that it's screaming for. It's delicious. A little sweet, so I'm going to add just a bit of pepper. All right, we're going to let this cook for a bit. We're going to check on our chicken and then hopefully pull this all together and get a nice looking plate for you here. We'll be back. All right, so it's been a little while. Our chicken was able to come up to temp there in the oven. 165 degrees is what we were looking for on that. We've achieved a beautiful, nice brown color here. So we are just going to bring our chicken on over to here to rest. I'm just going to work with one and then grab some scissors here. And then using my tongs, I'm going to get in there, remembering that I had those 2 pieces of string. I'm going to cut that off. It's best if you can let your chicken rest for a couple minutes. That way you don't lose all of those delicious juices. So we'll let it just rest here for a couple minutes. I've got my sauce here, which we need to finish. So we've got this beautiful Marsala that's thickened down to a quarter. We're going to add in our ½ cup of heavy cream. And we're going to give that a stir. It's beautiful. Delish. Beautiful cream sauce. All right, we'll let that come up to temp. I've got a little parsley here for garnish. I'm just gonna wad it into a little bowl here and just run my knife across it. Just to bring a little color to this plate, because even though it's plentiful in flavor, it's not the most colorful dish. So we've got some chopped parsley for our plate there. My sauce is back up to a little bubble here. I'm just gonna let that cream kind of cook into there. But that is ready for the most part. Now we'll go here and slice our chicken. And I like to just kind of slice it at an angle. I think it looks really nice that way. And again, you know, if you're a pretty light eater, or if you put a salad on the side of this meal, this really is enough for 2 people to split each breast. I'm going to put our chicken there. Let me see if I can show you the center. Beautifully cooked chicken. You can see those sun-dried tomatoes, all of that wonderful stuffing in there. I think we'll do just 3 pieces on here. Save those 2 for later. Our sauce looks perfect. Bring that right on over here. Let's give it one last stir. And we'll just spoon it on top, making sure I get some nice mushrooms in the mix there. Oh, that's just beautiful. And if you ever have extra sauce, this makes amazing cream and mushroom soup. Here we go. Put a little bit of parsley around the edge just for some color. And I like the flavor too. And then of course, nothing says Italian like a little bit of grated Parmesan cheese right over the top. Or pecorino, or Romano, whatever you really like. And there you go, folks. We've got our stuffed chicken marsala today. It was stuffed with sun-dried tomatoes, 3 different kinds of cheese, a little bit of sour cream, and some breadcrumbs. And then we made a delicious pan sauce out of some mushrooms, onions, and marsala wine, and a little bit of heavy cream to top it off. So now that we've been to Italy, we're going to take a tour with Chef Amy, and we're going to meet her here in a couple minutes in France. We'll see you there.
Hey everyone, we are traveling to France today. I am Chef Amy, and today we are going to be making a dessert that I love. I consider a dessert. Some people will have it for breakfast. I'm not judging. We are making crepes stuffed with cheese and cherries, or stuffed with cheese and then topped with flambéed cherries. Now, I love this dish because it's easy, it's simple, there aren't very many ingredients, it's a breeze to put together, and in addition, for anybody that has, you know, a time issue and they can't spend a whole lot of time creating a dish and they only have a few minutes here and there, it's something that you can make in batches or in pieces, and you can freeze or store the individual pieces of this recipe for when you're ready. So crepes are so easy to make. They're quick, and they're great frozen. You can pop them in the freezer and just portion them out, and you can pull one out and thaw it whenever you're ready. The cherry sauce is also something that you can cook up fairly quickly and then portion out into little individual portions and then thaw those as you want to come up with a quick little dish on the fly. Okay, filling is the same. So let's start by making crepes. It is just a couple of ingredients. So I'm going to start with adding to my bowl. I've got some flour, just regular all-purpose flour. I'm going to add to that just a pinch of salt. I'm also going to add some milk. I am also going to add 1 egg. that I'm going to go ahead and whisk up right here. And then I'm going to add some melted butter that has cooled a little bit. You don't want to melt some butter in the microwave or on the stove, and then while it's really rip-roaring hot, pour it into this because you'll cook your eggs. So again, make sure that's cooled down a little bit. You can see how it's gone from clear to kind of cloudy again. So I'm just going to add that in. We're safe to do that. And then lastly, it's not a necessary ingredient. I'm sure plenty of you have made crepes without this, but it's an addition that I really love. I'm going to add 1/4 cup of just something bubbly. I got ginger beer right here, which is going to give us some extra flavor, but you could use tonic water, club soda, just something effervescent. And I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. Okay, I'm going to give it a quick little whisk. And that, once that flour is incorporated, that's all there is to it. The crepe batter is made. Now, I suggest that you let it rest for a few minutes before making your crepes. Again, not entirely necessary, but something that I think kind of helps the batter. And actually, I see my thickness of my batter, and I'm going to add just a little bit more liquid here because I know the consistency I'm looking for. You want something that's not as thick as pancake batter, but a little thinner. You're going to want it to kind of run. I'm going to do that one more time, and then I'll be satisfied with that. Terrific. So we are done with step 1. I'm going to set that aside and let it rest for just a tiny little bit of time. Next, I have everything that I need for my filling. So what I've got here is I have some mascarpone cheese, which is a delicious cheese. And I have set this out a while, and I have brought it to room temperature. And I want to do that because it's going to be easier to work with. So here we go. Just going to go ahead and add that to my bowl. I'm going to need some help. There we go. I'm going to add that to my bowl. To the cheese, which is going to get nice and soft and creamy, I'm going to add a pinch of cinnamon. I'm going to add some sugar. And just under a cup of mini chocolate chips. And all I'm going to do is kind of mash that together. Give it a quick little stir, get that sugar and that sweetness combined with that slightly tangy cheese. It's not as tangy as, say, a cream cheese, but it's similar. It's similar in texture, similar in taste. Like I said, just a little less tang. So again, this is a dish that's going to have punches of flavor. And just like that, in what, 3-4 minutes, we've now made crepe batter and our filling. So, I'm going to set that aside. All right, next, I'm going to start my sauce. So, my sauce is going to be cherry sauce. So, I've got some pitted cherries right here. You can use fresh, you can use frozen. I think cooking down, starting from frozen, you'll probably cook them down a little bit faster than starting from fresh, but it is perfectly fine to use either, and you don't have to mess with the ratios at all. So I'm going to take my cherries, I'm going to put them in my saucepan. Next, I'm going to take and put that on the stove. I'm going to take a lemon. And I am going to take half of it. Actually, what I'm going to do is I want the zest and the juice of half a lemon. But it's not going to be easy to zest, half a lemon. So I'm going to, while it's still whole, I'm going to go ahead and get some zest off of there. And when you zest any kind of citrus, you only want the very top layer. You don't want to get down into this white. That's the pith. It's very bitter, and it'll change the flavor of your dish in a not positive way. So that's it. I just wanted a tiny little bit of zest. I'm going to collect that up and put that in my pot over here. Great. Now I'm going to cut that in half. I did this before we went on camera, but I went ahead and rolled my citrus. That will release the juices, and you'll get a lot more juice out of your citrus if you do that before you try and juice it. You can squeeze it with your hands, but I've got a citrus juicer, so I'll go ahead and put the juice of this lemon in here. There we go. Perfect. And to this, I'm also going to add some sugar. That's our sauce. I'm going to put that on about a medium heat. And I want to see that start to get a little bit bubbly, because in the end, I want this to reduce down. I want the cherries to burst. I want their pectins to be released. And I want this to become a nice, thick, glossy sauce that we top our crepes with. Okay? So while this cooks, I'm just going to give it a stir to get those sugars down into that cherry juice that was already releasing. We're going to go ahead and make some crepes. And I'll switch my pot and my pan so you can get an upfront view of making crepes. All right, so that's our sauce, and it's just going to sit there and do its thing. And we will switch. Okay, so I said this juice or this sauce could be made ahead and then portioned out. So once you get a nice sauce developed, I take some silicone ice cube trays or regular ice cube trays, and I'll go ahead and put about a tablespoon in each ice cube tray and pop that in the freezer. That way, again, with your frozen crepes, your frozen sauce, you can put these together in a jiffy. And anybody that is busy caring for other people, or in general, just have a very busy lifestyle, this is a nice way to indulge yourself in just a couple of minutes. All right, so I've got a pan here on the stove. It is nonstick, and I've got that warming up. And I'm going to go ahead and get that batter kind of mixed up a little bit more. And then we're going to go ahead and pour a little bit of it into our crepe pan. And I've got a little ladle here to help me do that. I want to make sure that's hot enough. And it is not. I'm going to give us just another quick second to get that going. Getting there. Okay. So I'm going to add a splash of water to that sauce. So we're going to go ahead and take our batter, and we want a well-battered pan. I already have some melted butter on here. Just want to make sure that was clear. And then we're going to go ahead and pour our batter onto our pan. And then we're immediately going to start swirling the batter to get it thin. A crepe is a very thin pancake. And that'll start cooking the bottom just like when you're cooking pancakes. Now what I want to have set up ahead of time is I want to have an area where we can put the crepes as they come off the pan. So I've got a little pan right here, and I've got some little squares of parchment that I can set in between the pieces so that they don't stick together. I've got an offset spatula. Flip it very quickly. And I'm just getting a tiny little bit of color underneath, if you can see that. And once that starts cooking up, I'm going to go ahead and flip it. And you can tell when you start seeing just tiny little bits of golden around the edge, that's usually a good indication that you've got some nice coloration on the bottom and a nice doneness. So we're just going to pick that up and flip it. And there we go. It's only going to take a little bit of time to cook this other side. And while that's cooking, I'm going to go ahead and stir our cherries. And then we'll repeat this again. What I'll do is when I make batter for crepes, I'll usually double or triple the recipe, and I'll just make a big batch when I have a little bit of time, and then I'll go ahead and cook those off, and like I said, freeze those. All right, so I bet it's time to take a peek at the underside of our crepes. These cook in no time at all. Look at that. Wonderful. So I'm going to go ahead, take this off, and set that on my pan. I'm going to immediately go get my pan back on the stove, and I'm going to put some more butter on here. I'm going to make sure that butter is all melted. And it's clear that our pan is nice and hot right now. All right, there's no more waiting. I'm just going to go ahead and put my next scoop of batter onto my pan, and I'm immediately going to pick that up and start rolling that batter around because I want that batter to thin just as much as possible. I want nice, thin crepes. The edges sometimes get a little lacy. That's all right. We just want nice, thin. I'll go ahead and just lay a piece of parchment over the edge of this and go back to taking care of my sauce. Now, today, we are going all out for you, and we are going to flambe our sauce when it's ready, which means we're going to use a liqueur that's high in alcohol content. And because we're using cherries here, we're going to be using a cherry liqueur, which is called Kirsch. And at the end, we will go ahead and take this sauce, once it's ready, off the heat and flambe it. We never want to do it on the heat. We don't want any opportunities for fire. All right, I am starting to see little brown edges once again. So I'm going to take a peek, give you a peek. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and put my spatula underneath it, give it a flip. And let that go for just a little bit of time. All right. So we'll probably make one more crepe and then we'll move on. Our cherries are cooking. They're starting to burst. You can see them foaming. And I just want that sauce to thicken up just a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and try and mash some of those cherries in the process. All right. Just wondering how many people have indulged in crepes before. I love them. And like I said, I'll eat them for dessert, but I know plenty of people that also eat them for breakfast. And you don't have to flambe. There's nothing that says you need to set this sauce on fire to complete this recipe. You guys can make the sauce, store it, pull it out, and cook it without having that extra step. We're just being a little fancy today. All right. Pull that one off, and I'll do this one more time. I'm going to go ahead and lay that on my parchment so that they don't stick. I'm going to add a little more butter to my pan. Well, a little or a medium amount. You want that pan well coated. There we go. All right, get that butter all around that pan. All right, here we go. One more round of batter. And get that thinned out as best as possible. And just let that cook a little bit. All right, so I'd say we're close to done here on that sauce. I'm going to go ahead and take my filling. And I'm going to spread some of that filling on the bottom half of one of my crepes. And see that room temperature cheese just spreads so nicely. There we go. I'm going to check my, oh, beautiful, beautiful. Oops. Here we go. Nice and light. And I'm going to fold this in half. And I'm going to fold this in half again. I've got a little platter right over here. I'm going to set that there. Give one more stir to my sauce. I'm going to check this. And here we go. Turn off that heat. Slide him off right here. I'm going to give him a second to cool down. We'll get him filled and folded. And in the meantime, we've got our Kirsch. So this cherry liqueur, like I said, is a little high enough in alcohol content to where it will flame when ignited. Again, for safety reasons, you always want to have your sauce off the flame, off the heat when you do this. Let that cook for 4 more seconds. Spread my filling. Oh, he's almost melting. Oh, yummy. All right, fold it in half and in half again. Lay that on our plate right there. I am going to take my Kirsch. I'm never pouring it straight from the bottle. I'm going to pour it into, actually, I wanted a measuring cup with a spout. I'm going to switch my vessel. There we go. We are going to take our pan. We are going to turn it off the heat. We are going to add our Kirsch. And we are flambe. Hopefully you can see those flames. Hot flames tend to be a little invisible. but I can see them. And that sauce is boiling. And we just let that cook until the flames recede. And I know it's not so visible, but that's it. And like I said, that's not necessary to make this dish. We just wanted to be fancy today. But that's it. We are going to then take our sauce and grab our spoon and just drizzle that right over the top. And you know what? I would say, I don't have any with me right now, but I would say this would be an excellent opportunity to toss some powdered sugar right over the top. But that was the extent of that entire dessert. So I think it looks delicious. You've got the crepes, which can be made ahead of time. You've got that luscious mascarpone filling with the chocolate chips and the little touch of cinnamon. You've got, and by the magic of TV, voila. There we go.
Yeah.
We'll turn that around. And we'll just cut right into that. And you can see those chocolate chips and that cheese in the middle. Oh, it's oozing out. Well, hopefully you will make these at home. I hope you enjoy them. I hope there's something nice and easy to make ahead and share with others. I'm going to bid you adieu from France. Au revoir.